Hey everyone, welcome back for module 3 of the CompTIA A course. Today's module has got quite a big title, and believe it or not, that actually is the official title for this module. It is titled Installing, Configuring and Troubleshooting Display and Multimedia Devices. As for the actual topics in this specific module, they are as follow. Install and configure display devices, troubleshoot display devices, and lastly, install and configure multimedia devices. Now, guys, if you're new to my channel, please remember to subscribe down below. Otherwise, you're not going to know when the next module comes out for this A+ course. I mean, what's the point of watching just one module if you're not going to watch the rest of them? It's not really going to help you, especially regarding your exam, right? Also, give the video a like. I do put a lot of effort into these videos. You wouldn't believe how long it actually takes me to make these videos. And since we've got all that out of the way, I think we can jump in and get to our first topic here, which is display device types. Now, regarding display device types, this is one way or another way to get your information on your computer displayed to you. Now, it's not necessarily going to be a computer, but it's usually a computer. The first one on our list here is monitors. Second, projectors, and the last one there, virtual reality headsets. They're more commonly referred to as VR headsets, however. Alright, so regarding these display types, let's take a look briefly at the first one there being monitors. So regarding monitors, you get many shapes, many sizes, many kinds. The first one there they mention is CRT, which is a legacy kind. Now, if you would remember from our previous courses, the word legacy means old piece of software, old piece of hardware. It is something old which is probably no longer being used, which in this case is hardware. So CRT are those big old heavy computer screens that took up all the space on your computer's desk. Those are the ones we're talking about. Those are extinct, so I think they discontinued those around 2009, if memory serves correctly. So nowadays, you're probably only going to find these flat screen computer screens, LCDs, LEDs, which are very much the same. At the end of the day, it's just the lighting that works differently. Some of them are backlit and some of them are lit from the sides. So when we say LED, it's essentially still an LCD, it's just the way it's basically lit. So instead of it being an old fluorescent tube at the back, it might be lighting diodes. Sometimes it might be white, sometimes it might be, blue, green, red, those kinds of diodes. OLD is the same story. It's basically just an organic light emitting diode is what the OLD is. So all in all, it's just different kinds of way of lighting your screen. So still the same exact same screen, same panels, same surface area, same everything. It's just the way we go and light the screen. Some of them are from the back, some of them are from the side, some of them are, via little different kinds of tiny little lights. Some of them are one fluorescent tube at the back. So it's just the way you go and light them. That's essentially the difference here. The big difference between something old like CRT and something new like an LCD or LED is, never mind the size and the actual dimensions, is the power consumption. The old screens were very heavy, very inconvenient, and very power hungry. Where your newer screens, which are obviously flat, much smaller, they're obviously very lighter on power consumption as well. So if you're living in a country where power is very expensive, or where you've got a very sensitive power bill, then well, obviously flat screen is the way to go. Even though that's actually the only way the one you can buy these days. And then the next type of display we had on the list is digital projectors. I think we all know more or less what a projector is, but did you know you get different kinds of projectors? The big difference being, once again, the way the lighting works. On the list here, you'll see three kinds: CRT, LCD, and DLP. At first, it kind of just sounds like we're talking about computer monitors, where in fact, these are actually different types of projectors you get. The first one here on the list is CRT. This is actually a very fancy one and the de facto standard for most true theaters. These are very expensive and heavy devices. The LCD one on the list is by definition a device containing three tiny liquid crystal displays with a series of mirrors and lenses. An analog-based display technology used in video projectors employing three fixed panels of pixels. So that's one panel for red, one for green, and one for blue. The pixels on these panels are subject to charges representing the changing video signal. The pixels orient themselves so that light striking them is either passed to a degree or completely blocked in that area of the panel. These LCD projectors are very lightweight, small, and relatively bright. They're very simple to operate and set up, and also pretty relatively inexpensive, mind you. Now the third one we have on the list here being DLP, that stands for Digital Light Processing, where the LCD one stood for Liquid Crystal Display, just in case you guys don't know what the abbreviation stands for. The DLP version replaces the free LCDs with a silicon chip. Each chip contains approximately 750,000 or microscopic mirrors of pixels. That's just mind-blowing, isn't it? So via digital input representing the changing video signal, these mirrors rapidly orient themselves so that light striking them is either reflected towards or away from a lens. Thus, areas of the chip correspond to light and dark areas of the video image. Alright guys, so let's take a look at that third one that we had on the list of the initial display types, which was VR headsets. As you can see, a VR headset is worn like goggles to interact with images displayed in the headset. Now these you also get in many shapes and sizes. I believe way in the beginning they were called Oculus Rifts. Probably still get those. And nowadays you can buy these at minimal price. They're not as expensive as they used to be. They used to be quite pricey, these little toys. Nowadays, because of how high in demand they are, the prices obviously come down. You know, supply and demand, as they say. So if you buy yourself a cell phone, there's a chance you can actually go and buy yourself one of these as well. You hook it up to your cell phone, and in a nutshell, it's going to basically put you in a virtual reality. Goes over your eyes, goes completely over your head, and they work best if you've got headphones. You know, so people generally use this for gaming or movies and stuff. I think the biggest use for them would probably be gaming. You know, we gamers, we love using these. If you want to go and submerge yourself in maybe a horror game or maybe some first-person shooter game, this is the epic way to go and do it. You know, you're going to completely submerge yourself, put yourself in a virtual reality, and some of them even come with controllers. You know, they come with little controllers. It really makes it feel and look like you're in a virtual reality. Alright guys, let's move on to the next topic being display device settings and features. The first point being resolution and then also analog and digital output. Now resolution in a nutshell is just the size that you guys are going to be seeing it on the screen. So if you guys don't know what resolution is, go right click on your desktop, go check in your display settings, go fill up the resolution, and you're going to find very quickly out that it actually makes your screen look bigger or smaller, for the lack of a better description. Now with regards to analog and digital, analog can be seen as the older display model. Most screens still support analog. Believe it or not, I think actually there's some screens that only support analog till this day. And you can identify this by the little cable you plug in the back. So if you plug a cable in the back of your screen and it's got a little, like a little blue connector, that generally is an indication that it's an analog cable with an analog signal. That cable is called a VGA cable or a VGA port. Then you also get digital output, which is normally a white connector. It's not set in stone. And that little connector is called a DVI connector. Digital video input is what it stands for. And you also get screen size and aspect ratio, refresh rate, which is not as replicable as it used to be. Although the faster you refresh rate, the better in the end of the day, but you do need a pretty decent graphics card and a pretty decent CPU and all that. Brightness, contrast ratio, and luminance. Brightness is not really a big factor these days unless you're using a laptop which is running on a battery. If you're running on a laptop which is on its battery and it's not plugged in, you might want to go and lower the brightness because that's obviously going to make your battery last a little bit longer. Illuminance, that's just, you know, how much light it actually gives off. So if you're in a dark room, the brighter something is, the brighter it's going to make that room. You can think of it as a light bulb. Viewing angle and privacy filters, you guys are probably going to see these most often if you go to something like an ATM. So if you go to an ATM to go and withdraw money, they generally have privacy filters. You get them in other places in life as well, but the most common place you guys are probably going to see these is at an ATM. So generally how they work is if someone stands at an angle behind you and they try and look on your screen while you're busy doing your financial business, they're not going to see anything. Ideally, that's the idea. They're not going to see anything. They're just going to see a black screen or something else for that matter. You have to be in front of the screen at the right angle to be able to see the information on the screen. So that's to prevent shoulder surfing is the term. Shoulder surfing is when someone tries to, figuratively speaking, or in some cases literally, look over your shoulder, and this is obviously in the hopes of getting something sensitive, like a password, a username, a bank account number, anything sensitive, that you don't want someone to get. That's going to be shoulder surfing. You also get coatings. They make mention of XGA and HDA standards, which includes resolution, color depth, aspect ratio, and so on. Alright, so moving on, more about device connections and cables now. So many types of connectors and cables. You guys will find if you go buy yourself a pretty decent graphics card, it doesn't have to be the most expensive video card or graphics card. Most of these days have multiple ports. They support multiple kinds of video. Generally, you'll find a VGA port on them and a DVI port and maybe even a third one. Some of the more expensive, more fancy ones might only have DVI ports on them. But in a nutshell, most of them have ports for multiple types of video, analog and digital. So they make mention of video adapters and devices can support multiple cable types. So notice the keyword there is can support. Doesn't mean it will support. Ironically, you would think if you pay more money, your card's going to actually support more, but in most cases I've seen it actually supports less. That's kind of funny. So you might buy yourself a cheap kind of card. It can support both analog and digital, in other words, VGA and DVI. And if you go spend a little bit more money, it's still going to have the same amount of ports, but the VGA is instead going to be replaced by a second DVI port. So go figure, you spend more money and you actually get less ports. Alright, so I think you guys have got a pretty decent idea of what a VGA cable looks like. So that's the old one, that's usually a blue connector, but let me show you guys what that looks like. So regarding VGA, that's more or less what it would look like. It's not the world's best picture, but that should give you guys an idea as to what it more or less looks like. Now, if you look at the second picture there in the bottom, that little cable, the cable is actually also blue, but it's usually in real life probably going to be a black cable with a little blue connector. The actual thing that you hold in your hand, that's not going to be blue. It's the inside of the connector that's normally blue. And the place on the motherboard you connect it to, that is also normally a blue port in most cases. It's not set in stone, it's just usually in most cases. So this is seen as the legacy standard. The word legacy means old, remember? It's analog. Anything analog is old. It's got 15 pins, as you can see there. If you go and count all of them, that's going to be 15 pins. It's an analog interface, carries continuous variable signals. Now, generally, they work with about 3 colors. So if you ever find yourself with a screen where the color just looks a little bit odd, let's say it's very red in color, maybe very green in color, that is most commonly a sign of the VGA cable being faulty. In the old days of the old CRT monitors, it could be a lot of things, VGA cable was just one of them. But nowadays, I would say just go and check the VGA cable. There is a possibility that the VGA cable behind your monitor is just not connected properly, or where the VGA cable plugs into your graphics card behind your system case, there it's not plugged in properly. Or, there's the off chance that maybe one of the pins has been broken off or bent. So you're still going to be able to see a video image, but it's not going to be in the right colors. One of the colors is not displaying, which is why you're getting a very red, very blue, very yellowish kind of color. It works in 3 main colors, mixes them together, which gives you a clear image. Very much the same as a printer. So if you go and look at an inkjet printer, those color cartridges only have 3 colors, and by mixing those 3 colors, you get all the colors of the rainbow. Okay, so moving on to the next type of connector we get, which is DVI. DVI stands for Digital Visual Interface and offers a distinctly sharper, better picture than VGA. It's a unique connector because it can carry both digital and analog signals, unlike the VGA we discussed earlier, which can only carry analog. DVI can also easily convert to other standards like HDMI and also VGA. You can go and convert vice versa. Alrighty, so let's have a look at the next one on our list, being an HDMI connector. It is a vital input and output hardware component, this one, in many modern pieces of entertainment or communication equipment. I think this is pretty much what most of us use in our households, especially if you've got a TV or something that's got full HD. This is most likely what you're going to be using to hook up your laptop or your desktop to your TV. They enable HDMI cables to transfer uncompressed digital signals from any suitable audio-video source to the receiver or display device it's plugged into. In a vast number of modern homes and workplaces, HDMI connectors are very likely to be found linking desktop computers to monitors, TVs to set-top boxes, game consoles to projectors, and much more. In fact, across all fields of home entertainment and workplace communication technologies, HDMI is now one of the most popular and widespread formats for carrying high-quality audio-video signals between source and display. So you name it, you're probably going to be using HDMI for it. Now, in case anyone is wondering what the HDMI abbreviation actually stands for, it stands for High Definition Multimedia Interface. Not something you need to know for the exam. That's just food for thought. In the exam, they will not expect you to know what the abbreviation for HDMI means. So this high-end modern format was initially developed in the very early 2000s, just once again food for thought, with the original aim of improving the overall convenience and functionality of existing standards for carrying HD TV signals. So yeah, prior to HDMI, these were basically limited to either DVI or component video. So the good old days when we had to resort to using DVI or component video. Although there's actually still a lot of people that uses DVI. From time to time I find myself using DVI. Component video, those are the ones that look like a little yellow connector behind your graphics card. So I think the last time I saw one of those little ports behind a graphics card was probably around 2008, 2009, somewhere in that vicinity. So you can basically say more than 10 years ago. Alright guys, and if you look at the screen, you'll find that towards the bottom, I've got versions there for you guys and connectors. And I know earlier in this course, not in this video, but earlier in this course, I did say cables and connector types is something you need to know pretty much off by heart for your exam. Now, yes, you need to know what HDMI is used for, but you do not need to know its connectors and its pins. That's actually one of the exceptions. I wouldn't say you need to know the connectors and, all of that, with HDMI. Just maybe get a general idea of what the speed is. It's used for audio, it's used for video. It's the new replacement standard that's replacing DVI. Sorry, misspoke there. It's replacing DVI. So instead of using DVI, you can go and use HDMI, which can transfer both audio and video signals, where VGA and DVI was kind of stuck with just video, either digital or analog, but it was stuck with just video. So at the bottom there is more food for thought than anything else. And here is a picture of some of the different kinds of HDMI cables you get. It's obviously not the only kinds you get. There's many, many kinds. But if you look here, many kinds you get. So that is just some of the different kinds of HDMI you get. It's not up to scale. So the picture on the right, that's a mini HDMI. And the one on the left, that's more a normal HDMI port. Much, much bigger. So the one on the right, that's pretty much what you'd plug into like a cell phone if you need to have like an equivalent. It's like a cell phone charger. That's how small it actually is. Where the one on the left is very much the same size as what you would plug into a USB port. It's not the same, but it's the same size, just to give you an idea as to the scale of all of this. And then we have another cable type and port on our list of topics today, which is called DisplayPort. Now, DisplayPort is an interface technology that is designed to connect high-end graphics capable PCs and displays, as well as home theater equipment and displays. Like HDMI and DVI, DisplayPort utilizes TMDS link technology to send high bandwidth video and audio signals. Now, in case anyone is wondering now what TMDS stands for, it stands for Transition Minimized Differential Signaling. Isn't that a mouthful? Alright, so let me show you guys a bit of a picture. So there on the right, there's a picture of a DisplayPort, or a DisplayPort and a display cable. You'll notice at first glance it looks very much the same as an HDMI, but if you look closely, you'll see there's actually a difference. It's impossible to go and plug them into each other's ports. Something else that's maybe worth mentioning here is supports copper and fiber optic cables. Something you might not have known, right? Okay, and then we have Thunderbolt and USB-C. Now, first off, what the heck is this Thunderbolt, or Thunderbolt, depending on how you want to pronounce it? Well, more precisely, I should probably say, what is Thunderbolt 3? Thunderbolt 3 ports look exactly the same as USB-C ports. And indeed, the connectors is physically the same from a plugin perspective. In many cases, they can do everything a USB-C port can, except much faster. Now, Thunderbolt 3 is a superset of USB-C. You can plug a USB-C only device into a Thunderbolt 3 port on a computer and it will work just fine. Obviously just going to do a little bit of a bottleneck effect there. USB-C is just much slower than Thunderbolt 3, but it is compatible. Now, if anyone is wondering about the speed at this point, since I've mentioned it, Thunderbolt 3 lets you transfer data at up to 40 gigabits per second. Now that's twice as fast as the maximum throughput for USB-C ports, which is 20 gigabits per second, and 4 times as fast as the original Thunderbolt interface. Isn't that something? Not only can a Thunderbolt 3 port help you transfer data to and from a compliant external hard drive more quickly than a plain USB-C port, but it can also unlock additional capabilities for connecting external monitors and expansion docks. A USB-C port with support for Thunderbolt 3 means that a single cable is all that you need to push power and transfer a large amount of information such as video data for 2 or more 60Hz 4K external monitors to and from a computer. Something you guys should probably also know is Thunderbolt 3 is more an Apple thing than anything else. It's something you'll mostly only find on Apple machines, but more and more Windows machines are also coming out of this nowadays, I've seen. I think Apple were just the first guys to basically adapt it. So it might be Apple technology, I suppose you can call it Apple technology. They were just the first guys to come to the party with Thunderbolt 3. But if you buy yourself a fancy new Windows motherboard or Windows PC, you should most likely have a Thunderbolt 3 port as well. Now, with all this talk about video cables and video ports and connectors and all of that, let's have a bit of a look at video adapters and converters. Now, there will be a point in time, sooner or later, where you guys are going to face a situation when someone needs to go and plug a cable into a graphics card, but that graphics card does not have that port. Some of the most common places where you'll find this is VGA and DVI especially. So maybe you've got yourself an old computer screen, might be something like a 19-inch computer screen or monitor. That old screen maybe only supports VGA, the old blue connector that you guys see there at the bottom right. And if that's the case, let's say you take that cable from your computer monitor all the way to your graphics card, and now you find that your graphics card does not actually have the blue VGA port. What do you do in a situation like that? Well, you could maybe go and buy yourself another graphics card, but the chances are that it's most likely also not going to have the VGA port. Less and less graphics cards actually nowadays comes with the VGA port. Motherboards, however, still come with them standard. You know, most motherboards will either have just DVI, maybe 2 DVI ports. Some will have a DVI and VGA, some will have 2 VGA ports. So, but if you're going to go buy yourself a standalone graphics card, chances are very unlikely you're not going to get a VGA port. So what you can go and do is you can go buy yourselves a converter, an adapter or a converter. It converts DVI to VGA. So if your motherboard or your graphics card only has a DVI port, you plug that sucker into that DVI port, it converts it to VGA, and vice versa. You also get adapters for other ports, it goes without saying. So on the left, you'll find there's one for HDMI. I've got one of those lying around in my house as well. I almost never use it. I don't even know why I have it. There was probably a graphics card once upon a time that needed it. But I know I have one of those lying around my house. The DVI to VGA, that's a much more common one that you'll find in a lot of organizations, especially in a corporate environment. So speaking of video cards, a video card is an interface between the graphics components of a PC and the display device. Now, depending on what motherboard you buy, some motherboards might come out with a graphics card that's built into the motherboard. I think most motherboards these days, well, actually since the beginning of time, most motherboards comes out with a graphics card built in. The one that's on the motherboard is called an onboard graphics card. Now, the onboard graphics card doesn't actually have its own memory. So if that graphics card, let's say, has a memory of 1 gigs, that means it's going to take 1 gig from your RAM. So if your computer has 16 gigs of RAM and that graphics card's a 1 gig graphics card, it's going to take 1 gig from your 16 gigs of available RAM. So in reality, you actually just have 15 gigs of RAM. So that's something to keep in mind, that if you have got an onboard graphics card, your RAM is not as much as you think, because your graphics card is using a huge amount of your RAM. This was especially troublesome way in the beginning, about 10-20 years ago. This was a real problem because PCs back then didn't have as much RAM. Obviously, graphics cards didn't require as much RAM back then either, but the percentage wise was a lot more drastic. If you go look at how much the graphics cards back then took from the RAM, it was just insane. So you would probably be better off buying yourself a standalone graphics card or video card, whatever you want to go and call it. You don't have to buy the world's most expensive card. Essentially, all you want to do is you just want to get a card that's got its own memory, and in most cases, even the cheapest cards are better than the onboard. So you can go buy yourself a card. One of the benefits is you're going to get additional ports. So you've got compatibility. You're probably going to get a VGA, a DVI, and maybe even HDMI port. Some of these cards only comes with DVI and HDMI, maybe HDMI and DisplayPort. It depends on how new your card is, what model you buy. Obviously, the newer the model, the less likely you're going to be to get a VGA port. So if it's a very new, very fancy card, it's probably going to only have display ports, HDMI, maybe if you're lucky a DVI port. It all depends on the make, the model, and the age of your graphics card. All right, guys. So, and where do you slide these puppies in? You slide them into the PCIe slot on your motherboard. So you first of all have to make sure you buy a motherboard that's got a port like that. Although these days most motherboards at the very least has at least one of those slots. So if you go check your bottom left side of your motherboard, it's normally going to be one of those ports there. It's going to be one of the higher up ones. The other 2 or 3 is normally normal PCIs. And the PCIe one is normally the one way towards the top. In the old days, these were AGP ports. Those got discontinued around 2009. All right, so let's take a bit of a look at adapter components. Now, GPU, which stands for Graphics Processing Unit, is something you guys are going to hear a lot. That is essentially another form of processor. Just like you have a CPU, which stands for Central Processing Unit, this one simply just stands for Graphics Processing Unit. Obviously, that's used for your graphics. It's going to do all the clock work and the hard work and the heavy lifting for your graphics. If you're a gamer or a person that works with graphics and arts and design, that little processor chip is the one that's going to do all the heavy lifting. Now, there's many cases where you might find that your GPU actually outperforms your CPU. And examples of this would probably be people that does cryptocurrency, mining. You might have heard of Bitcoin mining, and what we use for that is a GPU, graphics cards. So the more power the graphics card has, the better. The downside is these GPUs are going to be running at maximum, so you're going to put a lot of strain on that card. It's not going to last as long as it's supposed to. And also, considering that it's running at maximum the whole time, your power bill is going to look like a nightmare. You don't want to know what your power bill is going to look like. So with regards to these cards, being the GPU and all of that, you've got clock speed, shaders, frame rate, all of those little variables you can go and look at. And something you should probably be aware of is if you're going to go and install a card as is on the motherboard, probably going to be sliding it into your PCIe slot. It might work. The graphics is going to look a bit distorted because you have no drivers installed for it yet. As soon as you install the driver, there you go. You can go and use it. But if that card was already plugged into the motherboard when you installed Windows, you might very well find that your graphics looks perfectly fine. You might be tempted to leave it like that. Something you should know is Windows has a lot of drivers in its driver repository. So that basically means it's got a lot of drivers built into the operating system, including for most graphics cards. If you've got a gamer's graphics card, something from Nvidia, Radeon, Gigabyte, or anything like that, it's probably going to have some drivers there, but those are generic drivers. It's going to get the job done. You're going to be able to maybe play some basic games and all that. But if you want any of the special effects, some of the special benefits that comes with that graphics card, you're going to have to go and install the manufacturer driver. So for argument's sake, if your card is an Nvidia card, Windows will probably install the drivers for you. You can play some basic games. But you're going to have to go to Nvidia's website, type in your model of your card, get the manufacturer driver, preferably the latest one, and that will give you the special shading and OpenGL and all of that effects that you actually need for your games to, get them to look as cool as they should. Alright, so let's take a bit of a look at some of the tools you have to your disposal when it comes to configuring your graphics on your computer. Now, here's a bit of a picture, but please note that this is not necessarily what yours is going to look like. This is a menu which is now for Intel. So depending on your make and your model, yours is going to look completely different. So you might find that me and you use the exact same make. Maybe it's both NVIDIA, but my menu and my options and my benefits are not the same as yours. So please take this with a pinch of salt. Doesn't mean yours is going to look like this. This is purely suggestive, just to give you an idea. So with most graphics cards, if you're going to install the manufacturer driver, it also installs a bunch of tools that you have. Those are normally optional. And those tools, those menus, will allow you to go and basically fiddle and tweak your settings. What resolution you want, color depth, refresh rate, as you guys can see there, and much, much more. So if you're a gamer and you have a fair idea of what's going on with your graphics card, feel free to go into your unique menu for your graphics card and to go and fiddle with those settings. Another benefit you guys will most likely get with an external graphics card or an expansion card graphics card versus an onboard one is multiple displays. Now, I'm not saying it's not possible to have multiple displays with an onboard graphics card. It's just you're more likely to achieve this with an adapter card. So if you buy yourself a relatively expensive motherboard, a lot of them tend to actually come with two ports for graphics. It might be two VGAs, might be two DVIs, might be a DVI and a VGA. If you're very lucky, it might even be a display port or an HDMI port on the onboard motherboard. But generally, if you are a person that would like to have two screens or more, two monitors or more, you're going to need to go and get yourself an actual graphics card or video card. It doesn't have to be the world's most expensive card. Just get yourself a card because that provides you with more ports, at least 3 ports in most cases. So what are some of the benefits? You get duplicated displays. So if you, for example, have two screens, you can duplicate your screen. So if you've got two screens and whatever they show is identical on both sides. Although why you need to do that, I don't know why you would want to do that. When you get extended display, that's what most of us go and do. So you might have two screens and you basically are just extending your desktop is what we call it. I think that's the actual term, is to extend it. So you can drag stuff from the one screen to the other screen. So if you're a person that likes to go and game, or you've got a lot of work and your desktop is just not big enough for you, you might want to go get yourself 2, maybe even 3 screens. You can extend your desktop and you've got basically a very, very wide working surface, is what we're saying. You can go and choose how you want to display that. So let me show you guys what that actually looks like. Here we go. So once you've got both screens plugged in or more, that's what's going to look like in the menus. So the one on the left is when you want to go and duplicate your display. You're more likely to have the one on the right where you extend your desktop, but if you're a person that's got 2 or more screens, the one on the left is what you'll see if you go into display options. So you just go right click on your desktop, you go to your display options from there, and as you guys can see that it shows 1 and 2 in the same block, which means you've got the exact same stuff displayed on both your screens. Whether one of them is a computer monitor, another one's a TV, both of them are computer monitors, it doesn't matter. Maybe one of them is a computer monitor, the second is a projector. That might be a useful situation. I think that's the only situation where I would probably go and do that, is if I've got a screen in front of me and I'm also projecting via projector to some other people, then you might have, duplicate because you want them to see the exact same thing as you. The one on the right is when you've got 2 or more screens, but what you have on both of them displayed is not the same. So yeah. Alright, so I think we've covered enough about video / graphics cards. Let's take a bit of a peek at audio subsystems. Now, just like graphics cards that are normally on board, if you go and buy yourself a motherboard, audio is also on board. And that is not something we'll really see someone go and tamper with. Video cards, yes, all the time. We'll go and get ourselves a video card, cheap or expensive, for various reasons. Audio cards, or sound cards in some cases, what we call them, this is not something you really see someone go and upgrade. Unless you're someone like a DJ or something like that, maybe a sound engineer, you're probably not going to see someone with a sound card. I've even seen, DJs and sound engineers just use the stock, that comes with the motherboard. So it's very, very unlikely you're going to need to go and do this. Why I would maybe go and buy myself a fancy graphics card is because of a surround sound at my home. But even then, it's not really needed because the average PC at the back has a blue port, a pink port, and a green port. So those ports, even though some of them are input and some of them are output, you can actually convert them. If you've got the software installed for your motherboard, some of these can be converted. So green is usually an output because that's your most common sound one, and pink, for example, is input. That's normally your mic. But you can convert the input port to an output port. You can actually make it, put audio out. Instead of it receiving sound, it can put out sound. So yeah. I think most motherboards normally use software called Realtek. That's the one you'll probably find most commonly. It's not the only one. And generally, if you go into that software, if you've got the right software installed, it will actually allow you to go and tamper with these ports and convert them, swing them. And, If you think about it, the average PC box has a pink port at the back and one at the front. So in other words, that's your mic. So if you go and use the one at the back for surround sound, if you really need to use a mic, you can just use the one at the front, because the one at the front is still a mic. It's only going to swing the one at the back to sound or to output audio. It's not going to swing both your pink ports, only the one at the back. The one at the front is still going to be perfectly usable for a mic if you're a person that uses a desktop. Just FYI. So all of this talk about sound leads us to our next topic, being headsets or headphones, whatever you want to go and call them. Now I see here they mention headsets contain headphones and a microphone. Not necessarily. It depends. Generally if you spend a little bit more money, you might get yourself a microphone. And these microphones can be used for pretty much anything. It could be a telemarketer. It could be that maybe when you are in a video conference, you would like to have headphones of a mic perhaps. Or if you're a gamer, I know a lot of you gamers, you tend to like to use a microphone because maybe you want to play an online game where you can communicate actively in the background of your friends and your colleagues. Tell them where the other people are so that you can go and attack them, depending on what the game is. Or maybe you are a YouTuber that would like to go and record yourself, on a microphone while you're playing a game. Especially horror games are pretty popular for that. So you can use headphones with a microphone for just about anything. I think headphones are more popular than the microphone ones, but either way, I think you can do the math what you would probably use a headset for. You might wonder, okay, so why is this a topic in the A plus course? Your guess is as good as mine. This is an actual topic in the official A plus course, which is why I've got it in here. But realistically, this is not something you guys are going to get asked in the exam. I've never seen a question in the exam about headsets. So I'm mentioning it because it's in a course, but you absolutely do not need to worry about this in the exam. It will not be in the A plus exam. Now, since we know it's not going to be an A plus exam, let me just show you guys a little bit extra with regards to audio. So here we have audio settings. Now, I've got a screenshot there for you guys, but bear in mind this screenshot was taken at a certain date in time. And as you guys know, Windows, or Microsoft, I should say, they love changing the layout of things. So we might be using the exact same operating system, but by the time you guys go into your menu, it might not look exactly like that, just more or less. So this is only to serve as an idea, more or less. The theory should still be the same. So you're going to go into your settings app. So to be able to do that, if you're on Windows 10, you click on the start button and you're going to find like a little gear icon. It looks like a sprocket, and if you click on that, it's going to open your settings app, which is effectively the new control panel for those of you that looked at module 1 of this course. Once you go in there, you just go to your system settings and all that, and eventually you're going to end up at your sound, which is where we are right now. There you can go and choose which device you want to play audio out of if you have more than one. So if you've got speakers plugged into your machine, and at the same time you've got maybe some other speaker plugged in or a headset or something like that, then, well, you can go and choose between them. Which one do you want audio to play out of? You can get to choose. Okay, so I think that's enough for audio for now. Let's take a bit of a look at webcams. Now, in the last 10 years or so, I think there's been real progress of webcams. If you go back about 10 years, maybe 15 years in time, I mean, obviously we had webcams back then, but the quality was terrible. It looked like a very, very bad stream of CCTV footage. And even then, that, I don't know, it was just horrible, the video. You could use it, but the only times people really used webcams back then was more for like Skype calls and once a blue moon, for some sort of video conference. But people didn't really use it for video calls. It was more for personal Skype calls between family members and friends, not really for business purposes. Nowadays, webcams are on any laptop or desktop, especially laptops. Desktops maybe not so much, but laptops. Pretty much any laptop you buy nowadays, cheap or expensive, will come with a webcam. And the quality of those built-in webcams are actually not too shabby. Not the world's best quality. I mean, obviously, if you're going to go buy yourself one from the shelf, it's probably going to be better quality. But the built-in stuff, not too shabby. They will get the job done. If you need to go and do a normal Skype call, Teams call, Zoom call, whatever you want to go and do, it's going to get the job done. If you're a person that would like to go and record yourself for some sort of YouTube video, it should give you some decent quality. Not the world's best, but decent. If you are going to go and take your video recording to a serious level onto something like YouTube, then you might want to go and invest yourself in a more expensive webcam as you're going to go and get from your local computer store or wherever you guys go and buy your stuff. If you're going to go and buy yourself an external webcam, it's probably going to have a USB port and a USB cable. Nowadays, anything and everything is USB, as you guys know from earlier in this video. Since we're talking about webcams, there's a bit of a picture for you guys. So you can see there's a laptop with a built-in webcam in the top and the middle. Depending on what laptop you have, you will find some of them actually has the ability to cover that laptop. So there's like a little slider, a little piece of plastic you can slide over the webcam. That's for people that's paranoid about the security. And that's with obviously of good reason. Otherwise, you can just go take a piece of tape and put it over your webcam, which is something you guys should go and do. It is surprisingly very, very easy to go and hack someone's webcam. As someone that knows how to do that, I can tell you it is something you want to go and do. Not to go and hack someone's webcam, that is, but to go and cover your webcam. So just take a piece of tape. If you're not using your webcam, just put it over the camera. And one day, whenever you need to go and use it, you can obviously just go and remove the tape. At least that way you know someone cannot see what you look like and what you're doing. External webcams, that's not too big of a concern. I mean, if you're not using it, you can just have it face the other way. Have it face the wall or something. Laptop ones, those are ones that are a bit tricky because the camera is always looking at your face. So you might want to put a piece of tape over it. Now, regarding that little piece of plastic I spoke of earlier that you can just slide over the webcam, it's got nothing to do with the price of the laptop. It's just certain makes and certain models have that and some don't. So it is a nice feature, a nice idea. So maybe in the foreseeable future, more and more laptops will actually come with that little feature where you can go and slide something over the camera as needed, obviously. Okay, and then speaking of cameras, here we have digital cameras. So I think nowadays less and less people are getting themselves digital cameras. So obviously still high in demand, but not as much as they used to be. In the old days, we would go and buy ourselves cameras. Everybody would go and buy themselves a camera so they can go and make videos and more importantly, take photos. Nowadays, the average Joe, including myself, we just use our phones. Everybody uses their phones for just about anything. So it doesn't mean people don't buy these. People are still buying them. You know, if you are a person that would like very, very high quality of photos, you can go buy them. But more commonly, it's probably going to be by a photographer, you know, maybe someone that's in graphics, arts, and design. Those are the kind of people you can expect that's going to go and probably buy these cameras. Maybe it is a journalist or something like that. But the average Joe, including myself, I can't imagine myself buying one of those anymore because phones nowadays, all of them, even the cheapest phone, will have a camera built into it, and the quality of these cameras and the phones is just nuts. It's actually getting annoying, you know, because yes, I want a decent quality photo when I go and take a photo of my with my phone, but I don't want insanely high quality ones, you know, for the average day-to-day things. Because what's going to happen now is it's going to fill up the memory of your phone in next to no time. So you're going to maybe go and make a video of the average phone nowadays. It's 60 seconds long, but that video is like 1 gig, 2 gig, 3 gigs in size. That's just insane. I can't even send that to someone because of how big that video is. So unless I specifically want a high quality video, I want that thing to be able to record in a much lower format. Should be reasonable, you know, in quality, but the size needs to be much smaller. So what I think they should go and do with these phones is they should probably go and put an option there which allows you to go and choose the quality. Some phones have that quality, but most phones just go and record in super high quality by default, and they don't give you the option to go and record in lower quality, which is something I'm actually looking for. All right, and then we have here some specs regarding cameras. What I find funny about these specs, this is the specs that's given in the A Plus course. No camera out there has those low specs anymore. They talk about 1 megapixel, 1 to 2 megapixels, 3 and 4, 8 megapixels. Even if you go buy yourself an old phone from 10 years ago, those phones even support, you know, higher quality than 2 or 4 megapixels. I've got a phone lying around in my house that's got like 8 megapixels that it takes, and that's like a phone that's 10 years old. So yeah, this part of A Plus course needs to be updated. If it was up to me, I would obviously go and update that of the latest information, but that's not what the exam is going to ask you about. So if this happens to be an exam, which it's not, that will be the values they will ask you, is what the official course presents you with. So I'm trying to keep this as official as possible for you guys so that you know what the course actually has. But realistically, I wouldn't worry about digital cameras, not even webcams. Webcams, digital cameras, sound cards, that's not something that's going to be in the exam, guys, so don't worry about that. As we progress through this course, I will gradually point out to you guys when I see something that's going to be an exam or not. For example, earlier in this course, you would have heard me mention that cable types and cable connectors is definitely something you can expect in the exam. Maybe not, you know, as much about HDMI cables, but when it comes to like network cables, phone cables, you know, they're going to ask you about Ethernet, Ethernet being Cat 3, Cat 5, Cat 6. They're going to ask you about coaxial cable. They're going to ask you about fiber cable. You need to know the different speeds you get of those, what's the maximum distance they can go, what connectors those cables use. They're also going to ask you about wireless and wireless frequencies, something we have not discussed in this course yet. So if memory serves, there's a dedicated module which is specifically for physical media when it comes to connecting your devices to one another, like network cables. And there's a dedicated module specifically for wireless media. Unbounded and bounded media is what they call those modules. So bounded will probably be network cables, something like network cables. Unbounded will probably be wireless frequencies. You need to know the wireless frequencies, the ranges, all of that. So all of that is still coming up within the course. So yeah, guys, if you found this video informative or the course informative, please smash that like button. I do put a lot of effort into these videos. It takes me forever and a day to make them. And if you'd like to know when the next module comes out, because there's 18 modules for this course, please subscribe. Otherwise, you're not going to know when the next module comes out. And I will see you guys in the next module, being module 4.
If you love me, let me know. If you don't, then let me